Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to my channel. My name is Ogbanje Joseph. Please share and like, this video. Today we are going to be looking at international system and international law. The relationship between international system and international law. Now, what is the international system? Now, the international system is an abstract concept that encompasses global actors, their interactions, especially patterns of interactions among these actors, and the factors that cause those interactions. Now, the international system is the largest of a vast number of overlapping political systems that extend downwards in size to macro political system at the local level. So in our contemporary studies of international system, according to NIE 2003, that international system is defined as the system in which there is an absence of a common sovereign interaction among entities with no ruler above them. NIE still continues to say that the international system is referred to as an anarchic system, of self-help, or self-help system. According to Thomas Hobbes actually defines anarchy as a state of nature that is characterized by nasty, brutish, solitary, and short. So it is actually a state of war of nature. Sorry, state of war of all against all. So it is actually safe to conclude that the international system is that is characterized by anarchy. Okay, so and because the international system is characterized by anarchy, that is, anarchy is actually a sure way for conflict. And because there will always be conflict in an anarchic world, that is the reason, why international law is actually put in place. The reason for international law is to ensure that this anarchic system that characterize the international system can actually be well reordered. Okay, so international law is there to actually tame and checkmate the excesses of states within the international system. So what is international law on the other hand? Now, international law has been defined variously by various scholars. Okay, now international law is a body of rules which regulate interstate relations and which are indispensable for the purpose of keeping the society of states in order. Now, according to Fenwich, international law is defined in broad terms as the body of general principles and specific rules which are binding upon the international community in their mutual relations. So it is also defined as a body of customary and conventional rules which are considered legally binding by civilized states in their intercourse with one another. Okay, so that is actually international law. It is actually a body of law that guides, states in their interactions or intercourse with themselves. Okay, now you have known or you have seen that the advent of politics and the steady increase in the number of states, okay, in the number of states, first in Europe and later elsewhere in the world, created the problem of the newly independent countries trying to assert their sovereign rights even without due consideration for the interest of other countries. So it was feared that this situation could easily lead, you know, could easily lead to what? To anarchy in the international system. Now, this gave rise to the need to establish rules and laws that would guard against, okay, or at least minimize the outbreak of violence between nations and the cause of asserting their sovereign rights. Okay, so Hugo Grotius, who is the Hugo Grotius, who is a Dutch scholar and is popularly referred to as the father of international law, asserts that the international system must be regulated by international law to avoid international conflict. Now, any society that there is no law, okay, there is no crime. And where there's no crime, there is always bound to be conflict because people will continue to actually step on their toes. People will continue to step on each other's toes. Okay? And when there is no law, it becomes survival of the fittest. It becomes a war of all against all. It becomes a life of jungle. It becomes a banana republic because it will now be a society of anything goes. Whatever I like, that is what I do within the society. If I can kill you, I kill you. If you can kill me, you kill me. So that is actually a society where there is lawlessness. A lawless society is actually an anarchic society. So when you have an international system that is not regulated by law, it is actually an international system that is characterized by anarchy. Anarchy is actually a precursor for conflict. And in order for conflict not to always keep coming up, that is why a Dutch scholar, the father of international relations, Hugo Grotius, insisted that the best thing to do is to actually put laws in place to ensure that countries are actually, countries are properly tamed. Okay, now without law, what you have is a state of nature. What you have is actually a leviathan where people, countries that are stronger can actually devour on other weaker countries without being checked or checkmated. Okay, so it is international law that ensures that countries' excesses are actually checkmated. But what is a nexus between international law and international system? What is the connection? What is the connecting rod? Okay, what is the relationship between international law and the international system? Although international law has not really been effective in regulating the international system, but that is not to say that international law is impotent. That's not to say that international law is impotent. As such, there are some inbuilt procedures, to checkmate the excesses of states, okay, within the international system. Hence, we shall talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the international law. Okay, what are the strengths of international law? Okay, number one is the Security Council. Now, one of the agencies of the United Nations, okay, or the organs, one of the organs of the United Nations that is put in place to ensure that countries actually obey international law is the Security Council. Now, this Security Council is made up of 5 strong countries, okay, and these countries actually ensure that they are like the world police, and any country that goes against the international law will actually be called to order by these organ of the United Nations, which is the Security Council. Okay, that is number one advantage of the international law, that you can call international law, that you can actually refer to international law as not being potent. So the existence of the Security Council is actually one of the structures or one of the frameworks that have been put in place to ensure that the international law is not impotent. Then number 2 is loss of legal rights and privileges. Loss of legal rights and privileges. Once you flout international law as a state, you don't actually have the right to continue to lay claims to certain things. Okay? In fact, you begin to lose friendship. Your country will actually be referred to as a pariah nation. Your country will be treated like a leper because, of course, you don't actually obey international law. Okay, so begin to lose certain legal rights and privileges. Okay, countries will be, they will have the legal right to begin to now, disassociate with you. They will begin to actually, they will begin to, okay, work out on certain treaties, agreements, conventions, or protocols that you have with them. Okay, so that is number two. Then number three, that's number two reason why we say international law is not important. Okay, then number three, judicial enforcement. Judicial enforcement. The judicial enforcement here is actually the judgment of the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, or the international institutions. Now, these decisions are actually, one of the reasons we say international law is not completely important, because once these decisions are made, they are bound to be implemented and enforced. Okay, so that is number three. Number four is common good. Common good. What is this common good? Of course, it is actually good to all and sundry if a country or if countries decide to actually obey international law, because if you obey it, will be to your own good. If you don't obey, it will also be to your own disadvantage. At the end of the day, the whole world is actually going to, it is the whole world that will suffer the consequences of, countries or of the international system that is lawless. Okay, so that is actually the common good. We have number five, law as self-perpetuating quality. Law having self-perpetuating quality. Okay, now what is this law as having self-perpetuating quality? Now, it means that every law actually appeals to certain sentiments. And what are these sentiments? Every law appeals, and every law appeals to morality. Every law appeals, to every law appeals to civility. Okay, every law appeals, to cordiality. So at the end of the day, law has their self-perpetuating quality. So, and because it is law, you are under this moral obligation to actually obey it. And that is law as self-perpetuating quality. Because there is a presence of law, it will make you to sit up, it will make you to be conscious of the fact that you are not expected to behave anyhow. You are expected to actually live according to the law. Okay, then we also have political costs. Political cost here is that, of course, politically you are going to lose a lot of things if you don't obey international law. For example, you will be sanctioned. Okay, you will actually you'll be excommunicated, and all of that. Then the last one is sanctions. A lot of sanctions will actually be placed on you and all of that. But why do we say international law cannot actually guide the international system? Okay, the first one is lack of institution. We don't have police, we don't have lawmaking body that makes the law, and all of that. So lack of institutions is actually one of the reasons we say international law is not strong enough to actually regulate the international system. Then number two, lack of certainty. Okay, the international law is not certain. What can guide a country today may not guide another country tomorrow. So there are uncertainties, with international law. Then we have vital interest. The vital interest here is that when your national interest is being threatened, you want to actually stand against anything, anything that actually goes against your own people, against your own national security, against your own national economy. So that is vital interest. You look at the vital interest of your country before you actually obey or disobey international law. Then the last one is vital rules. Vital rules here is that there are certain rules and regulations that are very vital. You cannot go against it. Okay, so if international laws are made and they are not in line with these vital rules, at the end of the day, states will actually be forced to disobey it. Okay, so to that extent, we can say that there is a strong relationship between international system and international law. Thank you very much.